Guys, and welcome back to the Raise the Standard podcast with your host, Kaylin Piles. What is up? It is Sunday, and I am so excited to record today's episode. And we're going to be talking about making a pretty serious decision in your life. And I hope by the end of this podcast, it can help you gain some clarity on which direction you need to go in your life, whether or not you need to have a pattern interruption in your day to day, or if you legit need or if you need to make an irreversible decision. So that sounds a little scary, but as I cruise through today's episode, again, like I said, I hope that this episode helps provide you with some type of clarity on which direction or which thing you need to implement in your life. So before we dive in, let's see some updates. I know I always like to open up with some updates because I don't know about you guys, but whenever I'm listening to somebody, I want to make a connection with them. And as much as I love learning from my mentors and my teachers and my coaches, it's also very important for me to be able to connect with them on a human level. And so I do like to know, like, what's going on? What are you doing? What's the good, the bad, the ugly? And so I always try to keep it transparent with you guys. So yeah, this weekend was great. I spent it alone. I needed a lot of time to myself this weekend. And yeah, I don't think there's too many updates per se, minus the fact that I literally lost my personality for an entire year, I'm pretty sure. And I am just now starting to feel like I'm getting back to my old self. Not necessarily my old self, but like I'm getting back to myself with a million different life lessons merged into like the old me. So yeah, it's been quite the year to say the least. But yeah, I'm just good that this past weekend really allowed me to sit with myself and journal. And I'm like in 4 different programs right now, literally just learning so much in my own personal development journey. And yeah, I'm working with a few one-on-one mentors and coaches and just soaking everything in like a sponge. Like I'm in like a education, knowledge, personal development, spiritual growth phase, and we're rocking with it. We're vibing with it. It's truly helped me so much. And like I said, like this has been such a weird thing to experience as far as like quote unquote losing my personality, but I really do feel like I like lost my spark and lost my optimism in a way for a while, although like I show up every single day and I follow through with my promises. I still work out, I still do my work, and I'm doing all of the things, but it is quite interesting to go through something very, very difficult while also having to maintain everything else in your life as per usual, continuing with your healthy habits, your workouts, your career, with showing up every single day, especially in my position as a CEO and a business owner, is like you can't really falter, you can't really shy away or hide away, regardless of whatever you're going through. You have to keep showing up, and there's things to do. So it's very interesting to go through this process of quote unquote losing my personality while continuously showing up every single day. And it's just a weird thing to go through when you're in a huge leadership role. It's like living this like dual life, but I always keep it transparent with you guys. I think it's so important. Honestly, like I don't think enough business owners share the transparency that I think a lot of people need to hear, because that there are highs, there are lows, and I think it's important just to be able to share them all, because we're human, and there are going to be a lot of like really tough things that you experience, one, as a human, but secondly, as a business owner. It is not for the lighthearted, and you never know what's going to happen. And you have to be able to stay composed and stay sturdy and be able to process things internally while showing up externally unfazed and professional. But in today's episode, and we'll kind of connect the dots here for just my own journey and what I'm going through, and then also things that I've helped previous clients with as far as their own personal development journey. Because that's the thing with personal development is it never ends. It never ends, like legit, until your life ends. Like your personal development will never end, because we are ever evolving humans, and we're going to be experiencing new experiences and meeting new people and having new opportunities, and all of these different things that we have to navigate and learn how to tread the water in certain areas. And yeah, I think that the topic that I'm going to be talking about today is such an important one, because this is a question that you should be asking yourself anytime you get to a point in your life where you could just feel it in your heart or in your chest or somewhere, maybe your gut feeling. It just depends on where you typically feel reactions or some like type of contrast in your body whenever you're coming upon a very important decision that you need to make, and you're kind of floating in the in-between of like, I don't know, like what I should do. And you keep on going back and forth, and it honestly just makes you pause or freeze, and actually creates this feeling of stuckness where you're a little immobile and you actually don't take any action at all, which honestly is worse, because then you're just stuck with feeling like this tightness, and you're stuck feeling contracted. I think I said contrasted last time. Contracted is what I meant. But that's the result of inaction, is you just continue staying in this state of contraction instead of taking small action that's going to hurt for a little bit, but then in the long run is you're gonna finally be able to release that contraction that you're holding on to right now, because the decision, whatever decision you're debating in your head or going through currently in your life, it's making you do this back and forth, and you're probably driving yourself insane. I know I've been there before, but this question that I'm about to propose to you and talk about in today's episode is one that you need to keep in your back pocket anytime you go through a crossroads or an awakening or some type of pivot in your life, whether that's in your career, your relationships, literally your personality or your view on life, your health and fitness journey. Like you can navigate in any path in your life with these questions. So I know this is talking in broad sense, but that's just because I know everyone's going through something different, because we are all so vastly different. And so I don't want to focus this on one certain aspect of your life. I want you to be able to listen to what I'm saying and be able to process it and reflect on your own life, because yeah, for some of us, we are heavily focused on showing up for ourselves and building our own confidence, whereas some other people are really focused on their relationships. Maybe it's their friendships, maybe it's their intimate relationships, maybe it's how they show up for other people, or maybe they're allowing too much or too little in their relationships, what have you. And for other people, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so lost in like my career, and like I don't know what to do. And everyone is so vastly different. And so, what the question is, and the title of this episode is like, is it time for a pattern interrupt? Or is it time to make an irreversible decision? And I did a masterclass last week. It was by far my best training I think I've ever done in my entire life, because this topic is so important and not enough people are talking about it. But we're running a live program inside of the Higher Standard called Metamorphosis. And that is the theme for this month. And with metamorphosis, obviously, as you can tell, this has a lot to do with shifting and becoming and being, this next beautiful, amazing, wonderful version of yourself. And in this masterclass, we talked a lot about identity shifting, because we need to make this shift. We need to go from this old version of who we are into this new version of who we are. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a breakdown on like identity shifting and what it is. And then we'll roll into the big question. So as far as like what an identity shift is, it's the process of self-transformation resulting from intentional self-presentation. So identity shifting is the root of personal development. And when we're talking about personal development, this is what that is. Like, when someone's like, oh, like I'm on my personal development journey, or I don't know where to start with my personal development journey. You do. You just have to take a step back and ask yourself questions and become self-aware of like checking in with yourself and asking yourself, okay, how do I feel in my life right now? Is this aligned with how I want to feel? Yes or no? And obviously if everything's checking out and you're like, yes, everything's great, blah, 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 great. You're in a great spot in your personal development journey. I love that for you. Honestly, like that's the thing with personal development, is it ebbs and it flows. And I would say personally for me, it typically ends up being like a year or two, like going balls to the wall, going like so deep, exploring all to the furthest edges of like my life, and like things are a little bit dark and they're a little bit scary and change is happening so rapidly, and like there's a lot of emotions and there's a lot of fear. And then once you make it through that period and you work through all of these things and you're being intentional with your personal development journey and you get to the other side, whew, that is like the best feeling in the whole entire world. And for me personally, like that other side typically lasts for about like 2 to 3 years, and then boom, we're right back into it. And so that's not to scare anybody, but that's just life. Like that's what personal development is. And if you are actively choosing to be an ever evolving human, you're signing up for that. You just straight up are. You're just signing yourself up for that process. And for me personally, that's what life is all about. And so it's coming to terms with being okay that you're going to be experiencing some very deep depths of life, which means sadness, which means fear, which means, all of these different emotions. And that's just the human experiences. We can't just be happy at all times. As humans, we're gifted the broad range or broad spectrum of emotions, from sad to happy to angry to content to peaceful to play, like all of these emotions. And to back it up a little bit, I'm actually an Enneagram 7. So any of you who are big into the Enneagram like I am, I would actually love to know what everyone is. So if you're watching this on YouTube, definitely comment below what Enneagram type you are. But as an Enneagram 7, one of my defaults is anytime I go through anything, I just default to being super positive and super optimistic and kind of like brush everything under the rug if things are like going quote unquote bad, or just something negative in my life is happening. I'll just pretend like, that's not there and everything's fine. Doing one of those, well, toss that one up as everything is fine. But, with this past year and my own self-discovery and personal development journey, it was like the universe that was just like trying to teach me this lesson. And the lesson was the human experience is a very broad range. We can't just be stuck here in this like super optimistic, like everything is wonderful. Like we can't just keep ourselves there. And although that sounds really, really nice, and trust me, it was, it felt really great to live that way for 30 years. It's also important to experience the other ranges of emotions. And I avoided that for so long in my life. I really, really avoided that for a very long time. And I'm not sitting on this episode saying that, oh, like you should just be crying every day. You should, do the opposite of optimism. You should do the opposite of positivity. You should, do the opposite of everything that I was doing. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is when you are able to explore the whole spectrum of emotions, you're able to, relate to others more. You're able to understand others more. And overall, it just helps in every single area, your leadership skills, your communication skills, all of it. And that was a huge lesson learned for me in my life. And some people learn this earlier on, and we're all on different stages and learning different things at, different times, different years, and whatnot. But my point is, when it comes to identity shifting, like I said, it's the process of self-transformation resulting from intentional self-presentation. And so, for example, for identity shifting, if you want to lose weight and you want to become stronger, then you would need to shed the identity of an overweight person. And you would need to shed the belief that, this is fundamentally who you are, right? You need to shed the belief of like, oh, I'm just, a lazy person, or, oh, I'm just an unmotivated person, or, oh, I'm just like an overweight person, or whatever the belief that you just literally keep on telling yourself. Like, we have to be able to shed that identity in order to adopt the belief that you are actually a healthy person. And so a lot of people, when they're making changes, they think that they have to add on a million different things in order to become who they want to become. They're like, oh, I need to do this and I need to do that. But 9 times out of 10, you don't have to add on anything. You actually have to take away. You have to start shedding, right? We have to start shedding these fears, these self-limiting beliefs, these, you name it. Like, we just have to start shedding those things, because at your core, you are so much. At your core, you are enough. You have it all inside of you. You are the highest version of yourself. It's just over the years of being programmed and conditioned and having the life experiences that you've had, you just put on these like walls and like these shields and these fears and these self-limiting beliefs in order to protect yourself. And when you're really in depth with your personal development journey, you start to learn this, and it becomes an easier thing to understand, where it's not about adding on, it's about taking away and shedding things that are blocking you from being who you truly are. And that's where that concept comes from. So what causes an identity shift? So from my perspective, and just working with clients in the past, and obviously in my own experience, 9 times out of 10, when it comes to personal development or going through an identity shift, it is caused by experiencing a very, very, very low time in your life. So whatever happened to you, whatever experience happened to you, like 9 times out of 10, when that experience happens, that is the time where you snap into it. Your motivation is at all-time high. You cannot stand that you are in the depths or the darkness of wherever you are, and you are thinking to yourself, I would do anything to get myself out of this situation. I would do anything to, turn my life around, or what have you. Like, your motivation is at an all-time high when you are at your lowest low. It's actually kind of contradicting, but that's just the way that it is, because we're human and we just wait until our life is in absolute like hell in order to be like, okay, I'm motivated, I'm resourceful, I'll do the work, I'll figure it out, kind of thing. And it's funny how the universe like works, but a lot of times, like, you have that opportunity to go exactly where you want to go, but we kind of get on autopilot for a hot minute. And so, yeah, our motivation decreases. And so we're just like, I'm just going to coast right here. And the longer you coast, you start like dipping off, and then boom, next thing you know, you're at an all-time low, and you're just like, oh my goodness, like, how do I turn this around? And yeah, then your motivation's at an all-time high. So you, when you're in this low, typically you'll feel or see something different for yourself. And, this can often occur due to big changes or stressors in your life, whether that's age, school, career, work, your childhood, a breakup, something big happens in your life, a big transition. Usually during that time is when you start thinking like, oh, I need an identity shift. So I want you to think about that in your life, like what's going on in your life. Is there like a huge thing that just happened that's really getting your like head going and spinning and thinking, okay, like, which direction do I need to go in? So that kind of brings me to the title of this episode, which is it time for a pattern interruption, or is it time for an irreversible decision? So whether you feel it in your like gut or your heart that you need to make a big identity shift, or even a small one, then this is where this question comes to play. Obviously, if you think that you need to make a huge identity shift, like who you are right now is literally nothing that you want to be, whether that's in your career, your relationships, your health and fitness journey, your personality, I don't care. If whoever you are right now is not who you want to be, maybe it's your environment, the people that you hang around, I don't know. But if you know that you need to make this huge identity shift, then you're probably going to need to make an irreversible decision. And what that means is literally exactly what I said. It needs to be irreversible, and you need to make a decision like now. Obviously, you're in charge of your own life. I'm not telling you what to do, and that's why I'm not speaking specifically, and I'm speaking in a broad sense, but taking a look at your life and evaluating it and coming up with a decision that you can make that's irreversible. And I'll give you an example of something that I did back in 2016. So in 2016, I've briefly told the story before, but I was living in Michigan with my then boyfriend, and I was working a desk job for this college. And every single day I would like go to work and I would just be like, what am I doing with my life? And like, it's just like when you're asking yourself those types of questions, and typically we're not really aligned with what we're meant to be doing, or who we're meant to be. And so I would just be sitting at the desk job, and it was so easy. I would get done with my work in like 2 hours, but because it was a 9 to 5, I would just be sitting there, like literally wasting so many hours of my life just sitting there. And my relationship was like, okay. But there really wasn't any spark. I'll never forget. It's like imprinted into my brain. But at this time, I think I was around like 22 years old or something like that. And I just remember like coming home, and every single time I would come home, I would walk through the door, and my boyfriend at the time wouldn't even like look up and be like, hey, baby, or anything. Like he wouldn't acknowledge me. He would just be in his own world. And I would just be like, yeah, that's not for me. I don't want to be in a relationship where it's like those like roommate vibes, and you're just like coming home and things are taken for granted and the spark is not there. And it was just like not what I envisioned for myself. And so when I'm sitting there at work and I'm thinking like, okay, like I'm not fulfilled with my career, I'm not really fulfilled with my relationship, there were a lot of things on my list I was not ticking off. Like I wasn't checking anything off. The only thing that I was really checking off at that time was the way that it took care of my health. That's pretty much it, which is great. But as I was evaluating this, that was the moment where I was just like, okay, it's time for an irreversible decision, because if I do not make an irreversible decision, I will just continue down this path where every single day I'm like, oh, I hate my job. And then every single day I'm like, oh, well, like, I wish my boyfriend would do this, or I wish he would do that. I wish he would do this. Like, okay, we can either sit here and just keep doing that and keep saying those types of things, or we can make a decision and be a big girl and go get it, go get what we want. And it was a very scary decision, but at that point, I had to make that decision with myself and think like, this is the two directions that I could go in, either stay and remain the same and do what you're doing right now, which on paper did not look bad at all. Like it looked great. Like I had a job, like I had a boyfriend. He was great. We were good. Like, but we weren't amazing. And at 22, I was just like, wow, is this what everyone was talking about? Like, this seems a little boring to me. And that's not the life that I wanted to live. Like, not at all. And so I was sitting at work and I got on Craigslist and I like looked up roommates on like in North Carolina. I found roommates. They sent me over the contract to sign in order to be their roommate. And so I signed the lease right then and there. I didn't tell anybody that I was doing this. I just did it. And that was an irreversible decision. Like the moment I sent in the paperwork, it was done. It was a done deal. I was leaving my job that I didn't like. I was moving across country. And obviously I had to break up with my boyfriend. And so that helped me make this irreversible decision to literally get out of my situation and go figure it out elsewhere. And it was very scary, but it's kind of crazy. Like when you're younger, like you're kind of low-key fearless. At least I was fearless. I didn't have a job lined up. I did not have anything in my savings or anything, but I just always knew I was just going to figure it out. I was going to figure it out. And it was a weird year when I moved there, but here we are in 2023. I think I'm fine. And the thing is just like, you've gone through so much in your entire life. You've gone through weird, crazy times. I promise you can figure it out. If you have to make an irreversible decision for yourself, you can figure it out. You really can. So that's just one example of that. and something that I had to do for myself. And that helped me put myself on a better trajectory for my career and a better trajectory for self-discovery, understanding myself and what I would and would not allow in future intimate relationships. And yeah, it gave me a lot of breathing room to figure that stuff out. But if you do not need to make as big of a transformation or identity shift, there's also smaller things that you can do. And what I like to call these are pattern interruptions. So if you feel like you're living life on autopilot and you're just kind of, just living day by day, but like it's not feeling like lush, it's not feeling exciting. Life is meant to feel exciting. Like we only get to live one life. Like we should not be walking around like tense and like sad, like all of the time, or like unfulfilled. Like you're a human, you have the opportunity of choice and decisions, and this is your opportunity to make one of those in order for you to shake things up and to really exude like happiness in your life. And so we can do this by big or small pattern interruptions, and everyone's is going to look different. But there's some things that you can do for a pattern interrupt. So again, just depending on what area of life you're trying to focus on, your relationships, your health, your career, what have you, there's a couple different things that you can do. Like what can you do in your day-to-day life that could cause a pattern interruption to make you think differently, do something differently, what have you. And so for instance, I'll just give a health and fitness example. So a great pattern interruption to do when you first start your health and fitness journey is to do a kitchen makeover. So this is a pattern interruption because typically you have, Oreos and ice cream and who knows, a bunch of pastas in your cabinets, what have you, just like, that they're not really aligned with like nourishing your body, but you have like all of these things in your pantry. A good pattern interrupt would be to literally take a day next weekend to go through your cabinets and donate your food or give it away or throw it away or what have you, and literally pattern interrupt by like making sure that the only thing in your kitchen is aligned with who you want to be. And just from personal experience, I remember trying to toe around this when I first started my health and fitness journey. And I'd be like, oh no, like I'm going to keep like the Ben and Jerry's and the peanut butter in my cabinets, but everything else will be fine. So I kept on keeping this doorway open for myself to go back and revert back to the old me, which was someone who would always overeat and someone who just literally had no control. Like I didn't have like self-control, or I couldn't understand my hunger cues at that time. And because I left that door open, everything in my kitchen was amazing. But because I left like the Ben and Jerry's and the peanut butter, it meant like I kept on reverting back to the old me, where I was just like, oh, okay, I'll never become like healthy. I'll never reach my goals, because like I would always have that temptation right there. And yeah, I'd always fall for it. I literally would always fall for it. And so I'm not saying that like you can't ever have Ben and Jerry's or like whatever in your cabinets. I definitely have like chocolate and sweets and things like that in my cabinets now. But when you are trying to jump from old identity to new identity, like we have to have a pattern interruption. And we can't like leave the door cracked open for like slipping like back into the old you, because trust me, you will like, you're not gonna have like enough like resistance to withstand like that temptation. Like you're just not. So that's just a small example of what you can do for a pattern interruption. Another one, a small one that you can do just depending on like your situation, is rearranging your house, like rearranging your rooms, or like a certain room, or flipping rooms, or doing something. So then that way, every time you come home, it's in a new environment where this new identity, whoever you want to become, like now she's walking into a fresh, clean slate. Okay. So, things are like furniture's rearranged, or, maybe you added flowers into your house, or maybe, I don't know what you did, but you just spruce things up, made it different. So that you can really adopt this new identity. Maybe it's personality trait or what have you. I don't know. But these are just small things that you can do that go a long way. So overall, with this podcast episode, like I hope that this helped you gain clarity on whether or not you need to have a pattern interruption, or if you need to make an irreversible decision in order to become who you want to become. One last thing that I want to note, obviously owning a coaching company, one of the best irreversible decisions that you can do is hiring someone as a mentor or as a coach. I do this literally yearly, on a yearly basis. Every time I'm upgrading and every time I'm rewiring myself, I will literally make an irreversible decision by signing a contract to a mentor or a coach, literally saying, hey, I'm signing up to change. I'm signing up to become this next version of myself, whether that's, me hiring my feminine coach or, a health and fitness coach, a business, whatever it is. It's important to make those decisions so that you can't slide back into the old you. Right. And when we hire a mentor, when we hire a coach, it's both an irreversible decision and a pattern interruption at the same time. It's an irreversible decision because you signed a contract, right? And if you are someone of integrity, that means that you follow through with your contract, you follow through with your word. You're not a pain in the ass when it comes to that. So first and foremost, irreversible decision. Secondly is pattern interrupt, because now you went from like just doing life yourself to now you have accountability. You have someone in the back of your head where you're like, oh gosh, okay, cool. Like I told them I'm going to go do these things. So this pattern interruption now, because you're like, okay, now, now I'm really fully committed to doing XYZ. And now I have this accountability on a weekly basis, monthly basis, or what have you. So just a couple things to marinate, a couple things to think about. And these are things that I went even further on. I went over way more concepts and tools in the masterclass that I did last week, which was so spectacular, if I do not say myself. And yeah, if you want to go deeper on topics like this when it comes to your own personal development journey, I highly, highly, highly recommend signing up for our signature program, which does heavily focus on your personal development and your self-discovery journey. And I also made a very special announcement. If you are on our email list, then you were the first to hear. But if not, I have officially opened up a very, very, very small case study for 5 women to work with me one-on-one. I have not done one-on-one coaching in about 3 years in this realm of personal development. So over the past 3 years, I have been investing well over 20, 30, 40, $50,000 in my own education and knowledge around personal development. And yeah, now I get to bring all of these expertise and tools and knowledge and education into this case study to help women go through their own identity shift. So if that resonates with you, I am now taking on 5 women for this case study, and I will leave the application link in the notes section of today's episode. So you can apply there, and I will be going through applications. Just to get that rolling. And I'm so excited to be able to work so closely with 5 of you. So that's all we have for today's episode on pattern interruptions and irreversible decisions. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Please continue this conversation with, your girlfriends or your significant other. I think these are very important conversations to have, and to make sure that you have support with whoever's closest to you. And if you don't, then maybe it is time to hire a coach, or it is time to hire a mentor that you can have these types of conversations with, so that you can gain more clarity on your direction and where you want to go. So yeah, share with a friend. Make sure to leave me a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. I would appreciate it so much. But until next time, I will see you on the next episode.